The year was 1986. Nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows, the town of Ashton was a picture of tranquility. Life moved at a slower pace here. Neighbours knew each other by name, children played freely in the streets. The gentle rhythm of small-town life was comforting and familiar. No one locked their doors at night, there was no need. Ashton was a place where nothing bad ever happened, or so they thought. The morning mist was slow to clear on October 12th, casting an eerie, almost ethereal glow over the small town of Ashton. It was a Saturday, and the town was still asleep, recovering from the excitement of the previous night's festivities. The streets were empty save for the occasional stray cat or early riser. A young boy, out for his usual paper route, noticed something unusual near the old abandoned mill. He had taken this route countless times, but today something felt different. It was a shape lying awkwardly by the rusted machinery that didn't belong. The boy's heart raced as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Curiosity overcoming fear, he cautiously approached it. Each step felt heavier than the last, his breath quickening with every inch closer. The blood drained from his face as he realized it was the body of Mrs. Eleanor Vance, a kind elderly woman who always had sweets ready for the children. She was beloved by everyone in the town, known for her warm smile and gentle nature. The news of Mrs. Vance's murder spread through Ashton like wildfire. It was as if the very soul of the town had been struck a grievous blow. The idyllic peace of the town was ripped apart, replaced by shock and disbelief. People who had known each other for years now looked at their neighbours with suspicion. This kind of brutal crime simply didn't happen in Ashton. It was a place where everyone knew everyone, and the biggest scandal was usually a misplaced garden gnome. The townsfolk gathered in hushed groups, their faces etched with worry and fear. Conversations were whispered and eyes darted around nervously. Who could have done such a thing? And why? The questions were on everyone's lips, but answers were nowhere to be found. The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered and ominous. The once tight-knit community now felt a shadow of dread looming over it, as if the very air had turned thick with fear and uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock gave way to a chilling fear. The town of Ashton, once a serene and picturesque place, was now shrouded in an atmosphere of dread and uncertainty. The murder of Mrs. Vance was not an isolated incident. Her death marked the beginning of a series of gruesome events that would haunt the town. 2 weeks later, the body of John Davies, the town's amiable mechanic, was found by the creek. His lifeless form was discovered by a group of teenagers who'd been out for a walk, their screams echoing through the quiet woods. He had been brutally stabbed, just like Mrs. Vance. The sheer savagery of the attack left the community in a state of shock and disbelief. The similarities between the two murders were impossible to ignore. Both victims had been attacked with a similar weapon, and the method of the killings suggested a pattern. Both victims were well-liked members of the community. Mrs. Vance was known for her kindness and generosity, while John Davies was always ready to lend a helping hand. Both were attacked in secluded areas. Mrs. Vance had been walking home from a friend's house, and John Davies had been working late at his workshop. And both were killed with a swift brutality that spoke of a cold, calculating mind. The precision of the attack suggested that the murderer was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Panic began to grip Ashton. The townspeople, once trusting and open, now looked at each other with suspicion and fear. The once peaceful town was now held hostage by fear. The streets, which had been filled with laughter and chatter, were now eerily silent. The murderer was still out there, hiding in plain sight and striking with impunity. The sense of safety that the townspeople had once taken for granted was now a distant memory. People were afraid to venture out alone, especially after dark. The playgrounds, once filled with the joyful sounds of children playing, were now deserted. The laughter of children was replaced by an eerie silence. Parents kept their children close, fearing for their safety. The very fabric of their lives, the sense of security and community that had bound them together, was unraveling. Neighborhood watch groups were formed, and missing person notices began to appear on bulletin boards. a stark reminder of the danger that lurked in their midst. The police investigation was thorough but yielded no results. They meticulously combed every crime scene, interviewed every resident, and chased every lead. But the perpetrator seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving behind no trace, no motive, no connection to the victims. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet the case remained unsolved. The lack of progress only served to heighten the fear and suspicion that now permeated every corner of Ashton. Rumors started to swirl, whispers exchanged in hushed tones. Some whispered about a stranger seen lurking in the shadows just before the murders. Others spoke of an old legend, a vengeful spirit that haunted the abandoned mill. Every theory was more outlandish than the last, fueled by fear and desperation. But amidst the speculation, one thing was clear. The answer, if it existed at all, lay buried somewhere in their midst. Life in Ashton was now a pale imitation of its former self. Gone were the carefree days of open doors and friendly greetings. Fear had become a constant companion, a shadow that followed them everywhere. Parents kept their children close, warning them of the dangers lurking in the shadows. Neighbours, once eager for a chat, now hurried past each other, their faces etched with suspicion and fear. The annual Fall Festival, once a symbol of community and joy, was cancelled that year. The heart of Ashton had grown cold, the laughter silenced. The murders had cast a long, dark shadow on their lives, a constant reminder of the evil that lurked in their midst. As the days grew shorter and the nights longer, the fear in Ashton intensified. The unknown was a terrifying prospect. Who would be next? Then, just as suddenly as they had begun, the murders stopped. The killer, who had held the town captive in a grip of terror, seemed to vanish into thin air. Weeks turned into months, months into years, but the silence held. Life in Ashton slowly began to resume a semblance of normalcy. The fear that had been a constant companion began to recede, replaced by a cautious hope. But the scars of that horrific autumn remained, etched deep in the town's psyche. The abandoned mill, once a symbol of Ashton's industrial past, now stood as a chilling reminder of its darkest hour. It was a place people avoided, its silence heavy with unspoken words and unanswered questions. The murders had left an indelible mark on the town, a reminder that even in the most peaceful of places, darkness can lurk around every corner. Over the years, the midnight murders, as they came to be known, became a part of Ashton's folklore. Theories abounded, each more outlandish than the last. Some whispered about a drifter passing through town, his dark secret buried with him. Others spoke of a lover's quarrel gone terribly wrong, a crime of passion shrouded in secrecy. And then there were those who still clung to the old legend, convinced that the vengeful spirit of the mill had finally been appeased. Despite the passage of time, the midnight murders continued to fascinate and haunt the residents of Ashton. The case remained unsolved, a cold case file gathering dust in the police archives. But for those who had lived through that terrifying autumn, the memory lingered, a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace and the darkness that can reside in the human heart. To this day, the question of who terrorized Ashton in the fall of 1986 remains unanswered. The small town, once known for its peaceful streets and close-knit community, was forever changed by a series of gruesome events that left everyone on edge. The fear that gripped Ashton during those dark months has never truly dissipated, lingering like a shadow over the town. The midnight murders serve as a chilling reminder that even in the most idyllic of settings, evil can lurk beneath the surface. The serene facade of Ashton was shattered, revealing a sinister underbelly that no one had suspected. The townspeople, once trusting and open, became wary and suspicious, their sense of security irrevocably damaged. The case continues to fascinate and baffle, a chilling testament to the enduring power of mystery and the dark side of human nature. Detectives and amateur sleuths alike have pored over the evidence, each new theory adding another layer to the enigma. Yet, despite countless hours of investigation, the truth remains elusive, hidden in the shadows. And, as the years pass, the legend of the midnight murders lives on, whispered in hushed tones, a chilling tale passed down through generations. The story has become a part of Ashton's folklore, a ghostly narrative that both frightens and fascinates. Children grow up hearing the tales, their imaginations fueled by the mystery that surrounds the events of that fateful autumn. Will the mystery of the midnight murders ever be solved? The question haunts not only the residents of Ashton, but also those who have come to know the story from afar. Each new piece of evidence, each new lead, brings a glimmer of hope, only to be dashed by the realization that the puzzle remains incomplete. Or will it forever remain a chilling chapter in the annals of unsolved crimes? Only time will tell. The passage of years has done little to diminish the intrigue, and the midnight murders continue to be a topic of speculation and debate. The unanswered questions and unresolved mysteries keep the story alive, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can exist even in the most unexpected places. But one thing is certain, the memory of that terrifying autumn in Ashton will continue to haunt the town for years to come, a stark reminder that some secrets refuse to stay buried. The legacy of the midnight murders is etched into the very fabric of the town, a chilling chapter that will never be forgotten. Scene 7, The Truth Unveiled narrator. After months of fear and speculation, an anonymous tip led investigators to a former resident, known for his troubled past and hidden resentments. His name was Samuel Tate, a man whose life had taken a dark turn following personal tragedies. As detectives dug deeper, they discovered a pattern. Each victim had unknowingly been connected to his painful past. Scene 8, The Motive Revealed. Samuel's motive stemmed from a long-standing grudge. Years prior, he'd lost his job and family due to actions he blamed on certain individuals in town. Each of his victims had been either directly or indirectly involved in these events. Consumed by anger, he sought revenge, but only during his visits back to the town, explaining the sudden start and end of the murders. Scene 9, Closure and Questions. Though Samuel Tate was eventually apprehended, he left a chilling reminder of how unresolved pain and anger can drive people to terrible actions. The town could finally breathe again, but the memories would never fully disappear. Justice was served, but the question remains, what other secrets lie hidden in quiet towns? Join us for more chilling mysteries and don't forget to subscribe.